Hello, hello, and welcome to This Week in the Middle East with myself, Francis Matthew, and my co-host, Eddie O'Sullivan. Eddie, hello.
Hello, Francis. Beautiful day here in London.
Beautiful day. Not so beautiful out in the Middle East, where we're going to talk about a very momentous week. The Israelis have been missiling the Iranians, and the Iranians have been counter-missiling since June the 13th. That was almost 11 days ago. And then Trump intervened, sent in the B-52s with the famous bunker busters on the three sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, Iranian nuclear sites. He claimed they were totally obliterated, a claim one might query. Last night, the Iranians launched a well-choreographed counterattack of revenge on the American base in Udeid, the largest US base in the Middle East. And today, Tuesday, Trump has announced there's going to be a ceasefire, which is not exactly being followed by, well, not by the Americans certainly, but the Israelis and Iranians who said they were going to follow the ceasefire are not. So we're in the middle of, the US has got involved in direct action. There's a war running on, and the last few days have been, how will this finish? Will it go worst? Will it go on forever? How will it stop? I would imagine at this stage that the Americans seem to be saying, we've done our thing, that's it, we're now out of this. But I'm not so sure. Where do you see it?
Well, the thing, it's a very complicated story, and I think it's very difficult for people to comprehend what's going on, particularly when Trump is making statements which contradict not only what other members of his government has said, but contradict what he said within 24 hours, 48 hours. So individuals watching this, and even if you're, you've got a PhD in politics, is find it very confusing. I mean, to simplify it, the way I look at it is that basically this is about dysfunction in the American political system, and the motivating factor for the Americans to get involved in the attack on Iran last weekend on Sunday, the motivating factor wasn't because he was convinced by Netanyahu's arguments, and certainly there's no material American national interest at stake. No. It's because of the electoral political cycle in America. And this has always been true in America. The political cycle conditions the executive behavior of the president, because all presidents are looking towards the next election. Now, the next key election for Trump is 2026. That's less than 2 years' time. Now, Trump is a lame duck president already. Under the Constitution, he cannot serve another 4 terms. I mean, some people say he'd be able to adapt it, but I'm not sure. So he's already a lame duck. So he's only got 4 years anyway. Now he's facing the possibility that in 2026, there will be a Democrat revival of some kind. And it's possible he could be facing a situation in 2026 after the midterms in which not only is he a lame duck, but he's powerless because he could have lost control of Congress. And therefore he's nothing. And therefore his legacy is zero. So I think there's a certain amount of pressure psychologically on Trump, and I think on his closest political advisors, that if you're going to act now and do something big, you do it now. Do it this year. And the big prize, I mean, he attempted to become the peacemaker in Ukraine, gave up on that one. Attempted to be the peacemaker in Gaza and seems to have lost interest in that as well. So where's a big political prize that he can stand up to the American people and say, I am Donald Trump, I have done something fantastic? Well, somebody has convinced him, and maybe it's just his own head, that an American attack, bunker buster attack on Iran's nuclear facilities would deliver the results that would make him look great and also help him, the Republicans, electorally in 2026. So the big question this week is, setting aside everything else, is how effective is that American attack being? And I want to quote what the New York Times published yesterday, if I can find it. And the New York Times headline was, Iran's Fordow site said to look severely damaged but not destroyed. So there are people quite openly saying in America that, in fact, the attack, the shock and awe, the super bunker busting bomb failed to do what Trump said it had done. And there are others who also go further than that and say that the Iranians have cunningly relocated at least some of their nuclear material somewhere else. So in its own terms, if the motivation, Trump's motivation is electoral, he's trying to look good, you know, I am a mission accomplished, I have destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities, it's not worked. It's not worked. So I think to an extent, Trump is at the end of the road. And I think you can see it from that extraordinary statement he made on the White House this morning, in which he used the F-bomb, speaking live. Could you imagine the President of the United States using the F-bomb in a rage about both sides, apparently, and then use the F-bomb?
Well,
I think someone who's been advised or convinced himself that by joining the Israeli attack, which was unilateral and illegal, that it would come out looking good, and it's failed.
It's failed in the sense that I don't think it's destroyed or obliterated the Iranian sites. I think they've still got the facilities. They've probably been damaged badly, but they can put it back together again. You can't stop this once the knowledge is there. Talking about the American side, what you got into, I think this is also being dangerous for Trump's own base, because it's a direct split between the neocons who want to rearrange the world in their image. Some of the long-term members of his cabinet firmly want to action and believe that Iran is unfinished business, whereas the Maga side of his coalition are firmly against America getting involved in external wars under any circumstances.
Yeah, the issue, the dilemma in the American political system, the MAGA coalition, which has been much trumpeted about, which put Trump back in, you know, the coalition between Christian conservatives and disaffected Democrat, that coalition has always been an illusion. It's not really substantial. It's not it's a negative thing. It was really get rid of Biden or something like that. But the capital fact of American politics is that the American politics is completely governed, particularly foreign policy is concerned, by a foreign country. And that's the beginning of the end of the story. So as AIPAC bragged, I mean, they weren't embarrassed about it after the November election, said we've got more pro-Israel people in Congress than we've ever had before.
Yes.
There's no evidence at all that the key elements of the American political system, and Congress in particular, has altered its view at all. So the Americans, you know, and Trump himself is stuck in a very difficult political situation from which he cannot extract himself. And this is the most consequential thing about what's happening and the ramifications in due course for American politics and the whole Western system, as we've called it. And we've already seen victims of the dysfunction of American domestic politics, the problems in, you know, particularly, you know, the ability of presidents to be able to act in a way which you think is in line with American national interest. So we've already got the United Nations is basically irrelevant. The IAEA, I don't think will ever recover from what's happened this weekend, because the attack, the unilateral attack upon nuclear facilities is against practically every single code that could be written. About
and the fact that he didn't wait for a United Nations vote and just went unilaterally in there destroys the credibility, further destroys the credibility.
And there are questions being raised, quite reasonable ones, is what the earth was the IAEA issuing a statement 2 days before the attack took place, suggesting that Iran was seriously in breach of its obligations.
Correct.
And then afterwards, the Secretary General came in rather shamefaced and said, actually, there's no evidence that the Iranians were ready.
And so the Iranian parliament today has just passed a vote saying we can't trust the IAEA. So
can you blame them?
So
you blame them?
Let's park the external side, the American side, which we've gone through a bit. Let's see how it now works in the Middle East, because this is the first time America has taken direct action in a very long time. But the question is, will they act on Israel? What does Israel want to do out of this? Netanyahu launched this completely. I mean, he didn't have to. He launched it. In my view, he was doing something which he's been talking about for years, but it does a major benefit for him is that it distracts everybody from Gaza and the West Bank, which are far more at home, far closer to the base, and that's where he needs to succeed, particularly the West Bank. However, I think he's miscalculated by attacking Iran, because he's been waving the Iran threat for decades. Now he's actually attacked it. He can do no more. And the Iranian threat was proved to be light. I mean, they have been exchanging missiles, people have been dying, but more Iranians died than Israelis. The Iranian attacks on Israel were not as effective as the Israeli attacks on Iran.
Well, if you look at the Israeli politics, and this is a consistent factor since this crisis erupted in October 2023, public opinion in Israel is very firmly in support of Netanyahu and his government's action. And in fact, every single report about the response since, first of all, the Israeli attack on Iran, and then the American attack, that the support in Israel for what's going on is overwhelming. Overwhelming.
Yes. No, they have a strong tradition to rally around the flag and support the government in times of crisis.
But in those circumstances, why would Netanyahu do anything but continue in the course he's pursuing?
Because, like with Gaza, these wars drag on, they get exhausting, people get fed up, and I'm not certain that he can afford to keep on launching missiles for months and months.
Well, who knows? Because the Americans are prepared to continue supplying whatever he wants. Our Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, has not shown any appetite for restricting seriously the support that we're providing, nor of the Germans. I think the French, I think so. What's going to stop it? What's going to stop it financially? There isn't an immediate crisis in Israel. They can pay for everything. They can maintain their universal health care, the standard of living. I mean, what's to stop it? So the truth of the matter is that I think the only way it's going to stop is when the damage done to Israel is so obvious and so overwhelming that eventually to Israel, the damage to Israel is so enormous, so unavoidably obvious, is that the Israeli people will say, well, actually, we think this line of action is not working. But there's no evidence that is the case. What evidence is there that the Israeli people are saying, oh, we don't like what our prime minister is doing?
In which case we look ahead. So we take some scenarios on this and look to what's might happen in Iran. If it ends, people have been talking about regime change. I think that is an extremely unlikely scenario. I don't think there's any government in waiting. I don't think anybody's waiting to take over. There is a possibility, if you want to see any kind of change, that rather than having the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in control as much as he is in control, possibly the Iranian Guard would provide a more military leadership. So you're heading towards a more traditional Middle East military dictatorship arrangement. That's, I think, the most likely outcome if there is any shake-up in the existing system. Some have been talking about how the Israelis have deliberately aimed some of their missiles to support Kurdish in the northwest and Baluchi in the southeast, two different movements. And they're looking at whether Iran, which is quite a fragmented country, if you take off all the fringes, whether that's going to happen. But there's been no movement on that front either. So if you're looking ahead over a period of quite a long time, possibly you'd see a more military central government and a more fibrous, they could be breaking apart slightly. But I think that is most unlikely.
Yeah, I think let's consider, the American view of Iran about what they think Iran should be. And I think the opinion in average American, I think the average Britain, is that they consider the existing regime in Iran to be intolerable, to be Islamo-fascists, they're horrible to women, they cheat in elections, then they sponsor terrorism. So I think the feeling here in the United Kingdom, and this includes people who are liberal-minded, who would like to see the regime gone. So there's no sympathy for the regime here in the UK. I can think of no one who's going around and thinking, oh, give them another chance. The question is, what is the vision of the future? And the Israelis had for years been promoting the idea of dividing up Iran turn it into a sort of balkanized Iran. So you've got the Baluchis, you've got the Kurds, you've got the Azeris, and you've got the Tajiks, and you've got the Afghans, and it all splits up. So you disintegrate the country. But that argument has been discredited by what's happened in Iraq and what will probably happen in Syria. But that's what happened in Iraq. So people aren't arguing that anymore. So the option that's coming up, I think, as a favoured option in the think tanks in Washington, London, is that, yeah, a kind of military dictatorship, a bit like Sisi in Egypt, something like that, complete control, got everything under control, can negotiate. And, if they treat their people badly, well, anyway, that's a price you have to pay in realpolitik. But the confusing part of it, the thing that confuses people, is the role of the clerics. And of course, in the United Kingdom in particular, which is a very non-religious society, nobody believes anything. The idea of a country in which, basically the Archbishop of Canterbury has influence seems so alien. But anyway, as you know, the Shia clergy are very well integrated institutionally in the whole national life of Iran, particularly outside the big cities, outside Tehran. And so it kind of overstated the fact that there's a guy with a turban on television is seen, from our point of view, being ridiculous. But I think from an Iranian point of view is not. So the idea of trying to promote a military dictatorship type of organization may actually be another bad option if the think tanks are thinking that.
Well, I don't think if the think tanks want to promote it, they're making a mistake. I don't think that the Americans or British have any influence over this whatsoever. I think it's simply an analysis of what might happen, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard has had a very significant position.
Well, can I just
and they are the ones who want to keep control.
Can I counter that? Christopher Tugendhat, who is he was trying to be leader of the Conservative Party last year, so he wants to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, a person who's considered to be an influential figure in British politics on the Conservative Party. He was talking very volubly on Sunday morning, and he was expressing a lot of belief in the capacity of us to shape domestic Iranian politics. He said, we got to get there and support the Democrats, and we got to get in there and remove these religious lunatics. We got to do that. He was saying that.
Well, possibly the one reason he's not the leader of the Conservatives and unlikely to be Prime Minister is because he is saying that. It's so unlikely to happen.
Well, whether it's likely or not, the point is that he's saying it. And I think the leader of the Conservative Party, Fema Badenoch, I think she's very close to that. I think she's very close to the idea that this regime needs to be removed. We must do our bit to do it. Thanks, America, for destroying the nuclear facilities. And off you go, people of Iran, and remove all these terrible Islamofascists. I agree. I think that is the mainstream view, and nobody. But the fact is that these nice liberal Iranians, who we all know, and they exist, and they are there, are not in a political movement. Unlike the Arab Spring, they're not suddenly going to spring up and take control. So I think more as not a matter of my preference, but as a matter of analysis, the sole effective outfit is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, who are there and are politically motivated, never mind financially motivated, to keep control. So I think that when they come, are they going to be easy to negotiate with? Are they going to be easy to talk to? I doubt it. Yes, I think that the clerics can be put back in a box to a certain extent. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard is Islamic, is going to respect them, but say, you stick to your role, we'll stick to ours, if that military outcome happens. Well, the thing is that if that is the possibility, what on earth is Israel and America doing trying to bump off the most senior members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard? If they want to do business with these guys, I think they might come in why are you making yourself unpopular with them? It makes no sense.
Well, I think they're making, I think that I'm saying that is the most likely. You either negotiate with as it is, with a government which seems relatively open to negotiate, or you're going to face a much more hardline government. That's how I see it. One group we have not discussed yet are the people in the Gulf who were left firmly on the sidelines, much like the Europeans and the rest of the world. The Gulf is much more closer to the action than the Europeans or anybody else. They have been calling for an end to the confusion. They are deeply concerned that this could explode. The UAE has criticized with amounts of deep concern, and Saudi Arabia has said that this is wrong and should stop. So, and I thought it was important that Trump's action did not include any Gulf base. The planes flew from America, went back to America. So he has not embarrassed his Gulf allies.
Well, I think he has. I mean, he has. Whether he has,
yes.
he has.
No, but he hasn't embarrassed by using their bases.
It didn't matter. I mean, he has, because nobody believes the American action, which includes what was going on before, right up to this point, could possibly happen without at least some kind of a facilitation by the Gulf states. And the view of the Gulf states has been, please don't embarrass any more than you're doing. So they were calling on the Americans to try and restrain the Israelis. Don't let them attack.
Yes.
We don't want this happening. And they explained, they explained it so volubly. It's incredible. They did drawings to make it simple. And yet, despite that, not only did Israel do exactly what the Gulf states didn't want them to do, the Americans piled in afterwards.
Yes.
So the Gulf statements have been very measured and mature and sensible. But they're clearly a condemnation of what both Israel and Iran are doing. It's clear.
Oh, definitely.
The most explicit condemnations come from the Sultan of Oman, interestingly enough, because the Sultan of Oman has felt completely betrayed by the fact they were facilitating negotiations between the Iranians and the Americans when Trump ordered Israel, and then Trump ordered the attack. So they feel completely alienated. The scene for a period, I thought early on when the attack began, I thought this is a great opportunity for Saudi Arabia, sensible, grown-up Saudi Arabia, mature friend, to come in. But I think the way that's developed in the last 10 days has made it much more difficult for the Saudi Arabians. It's put them in a position they really don't want to be in.
No, I agree. They don't want. Also, I think that the Gulf are taking a long, hard look at how Israeli forces are now acting militarily over quite a wide range. They're active in Syria, they're active in Iran, and so suddenly there's a new potential military hegemon who acting throughout the region, not a defense of Israel, but across the way as they seek to divide Syria and make havoc here and there. So, and I think that they have been used to watching Iran do that through their allies in Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthi and the popular movements in Iraq. Now largely hammered, but whether they'll come back or not is anybody's guess. And the Houthi are still there. The popular movements in Iraq are still there. Hamas and Hezbollah are suffering. So they've been looking at Iran, which seems to have been depressed. And now the Gulf is very concerned about Israeli military dominance.
Well, the lessons that have been taught over the last 2 years, if those people didn't realize it, that Israel will not tolerate any competitor in the region. It considers itself to be the regional hegemon. And what that means, a regional hegemon, is you're the dominant influence. Therefore, you can't have anybody challenging you, including Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia's main threat, and this is in the end why I think, the Saudi Arabians were confident they keep their powder dry, so that we've got trillions of dollars of money, trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions, and the Israelis don't. So we can go and stick money into the American economy. We can give it to congressmen and senators and media companies and public relations firms, and dare I say Trump's family. And eventually in American system, money counts. And that's what they're banking on. And I think they're recognizing that, in fact, it's not going to work. I think money won't work. And that there is something more than money at work in the way that the American political system is working dysfunctionally. How can it possibly be the case that a course of action, which nobody sees as in American interests, that's the Israeli attack on Iran and now the American involvement, how can it go through without even barely a squeak of objection in Congress?
Correct.
And it can't just be money. It just can't be money. There is a deep ideological conviction behind all this, and that has been created over decades. It hasn't just happened.
It was interesting that Trump said this was defending Israeli interests. He did not say it was defending US interests.
Don't you think that's spectacular? And don't you
Yes.
think it's an unbelievable thing to say? And this is why people like Tucker Carlson is bemused as an American nationalist, and Bannon, Steve Bannon, he was close to it. I mean, they're bemused; they can't understand, and I think this issue it's much more toxic, therefore, for America than I think people superficially felt. I think the feeling was, oh, if the money supply was counterattack, if there was effective counterbalance against, the money that was going into Congress, eventually the congressman would always say, oh, yeah, thanks for the check, and I'm on your side now. I don't think that's true. I think there's a deep, really profound ideological conviction in the United States that has been constructed over decades, generations of people who are cheering this on at the top of their voices. And so the upshot of it all is can hardly be good news for those of us who still have an element of diminishing hope in the great American dream.
No. So as we wind our way out, let's think what is likely to happen. Let's take a look ahead and figure out whether we think it's going to go on forever, whether Netanyahu is going to pull out, will Iran stay where it is? The various options are there. So looking ahead, I would offer a sort of main scenario that Iran will survive this, that the current government will stay more or less in place, that they may or may not come to some kind of nuclear discussion again with Trump. They both seem to be ready to start again. Whether that's relevant or not is hard to imagine. I don't think Iran can trust Trump anymore. He pulled out of the first JCPOA, and now he wants to start again. So some new round of talks may start. Netanyahu will probably, as you've suggested, continue this for quite a long time. I think in the end, the Israelis will get fed up with it. And I think the other states will get fed up with it. Eventually, someone's going to get tired of missiles going over their heads all the time. And in the Gulf, I think they're likely to get through this relatively unscathed.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say something which is not going to really make you very happy, because I think this will go on indefinitely until Israel is completely defeated. I mean, I'm not saying I want that to happen. It will go on until that occurs, because, I mean, that's the conclusion. We look at the dynamics within Israeli society. It's the most important thing. The Israeli people are absolutely 100% behind what the Netanyahu is doing, and they're delighted the Americans involved. They want the Americans to come back and finish the job, and this is just the beginning. They want Iran completely remade, and then you move on. You move on and finish the job in Syria. You finish the job in Lebanon, and then you get on with all the other countries in the area that are harboring people who are hostile to the existence. You keep on going. You have to keep on going, because you stop, then the Israelis will lose. It'll go on, unfortunately, until Israel is beaten. I mean, that's horrible. And that could involve, I mean, the tragic, the awful part of it is that we have a nuclear weapon in Israel. I mean, it's there. It's sitting there.
Yes.
For this very situation, an existential crisis for Israel, and that's when it will come out. And this is just a horrific news for everybody. And the hope that the Gulf states have had, if they hum along with the Abraham Accords and they smile a lot and they put money into American companies, somehow, light will break out and suddenly all these issues will disappear. This illusion, what an illusion it looks like now. The whole Abraham Accords illusion is just ridiculous. And then
we have two very different views. I can't see it going on until Israel is defeated, because I don't see Israel being defeated. I can only see Israel maintaining its core, and it may or may not come to some kind of final arrangement in Gaza. It may or may not continue to interfere in Syria. But I think the key thing which they want to do is expand in the West Bank.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish, I really do. I've had a lifetime of wishful thinking, Francis, hoping that tomorrow or next week or this deal or the Oslo Accords or Camp David or, Barack Obama or somebody with a nice smile and everything's going to, and peace and love will break out. I'm at a stage in life where I feel that it's just not that I've got anything to lose specifically, but I think we need to look it in the eye, because until people look it in the eye, and I think this is a really horrible situation for the Gulf states. Horrible for Saudi Arabia. What on earth are they going to do if it moves in the kind of direction that it could? So long as Israel is prepared to continue its unilateral action, and it has resources to do so, which it's got, it has the key international support, which is there, it's going to continue.
Well, as I say, we'll finish with a thought that they've got that sort of slightly apocalyptic view of continual war. My view is that they're going to reach some kind of balance. And with that, we leave our listeners confused or potentially able to choose one or the other and cease to be confused. Eddie, it's been great. Thank you very much. All the best. Cheerio. Well, we've got two very different views there. I'd like to hear from you whether you think the situation will in some way come to some kind of conclusion, or whether it will continue into a sort of forever war, which nobody has particularly wanted. So I leave you with that thought. I wish you salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.